So Baldur's Gate 3 finally came out, and you're thinking like me that you'd like to play through the first two games first before playing the new one. But again, like me, you're a bit unsure of how the old AD&D game rules work or where to start in Baldur's Gate 1. Well, have no fear. I'm here to help with some great tips for new players to put your mind at ease and also for vet players of the series that might just want to refresh on some of the game's mechanics. So grab yourself a cup of your favorite roasted coffee and let's go over a few things that are going to make your life a lot easier in Baldur's Gate 1 and also more enjoyable. Okay, without further ado, let's jump into this. Tip number 1, go into settings, add game pauses on enemies sighted, injured, and character death. This will greatly help your combat, giving you time to plan spells and strategies when you first sight an enemy or throwing a heal on someone who's about to die. Tip number 2. Next in settings, change your mouse scroll speed to the fastest so you can move your cursor around the map a lot easier and quicker. If you leave it at default, it's going to take forever for you to scroll along the map to find your characters. Tip number 3. I also put the tooltip delay here to the lowest setting so I can see the items and spells quicker. Tip number 4. To memorize spells, you will have to first select the spell slots you want to fill on your caster. Then you will still have to rest either at an inn or outside without a random battle before your characters will memorize that spell. Tip number 5. Dual class versus multi-class. This can be quite confusing for new players, and my advice is, if you're new to the game, don't worry about either. The characters you meet along the way will be more than powerful enough to beat the game with on normal. However, I will give some clarity when it comes to both. Basically, multi-class characters level their classes up at the same time, splitting their XP between each class so it'll take longer to level each class than a solo class character. Multi-class characters are restricted to non-human races, and dual-class characters can only be humans. Dual-class characters level a class up to a certain level, then switch to a new class, starting over at level 1, then gaining levels until they are one level higher than the previous class. This locks their previous class permanently, which means they cannot level their old class up anymore and can only improve in their new class, but they gain all the abilities and bonuses from their old class. Usually people level fighters here to like level 13, which will give them a much higher HP, a lower THACO rating, and Grandmaster skills in their weapons of choice. This is impossible to do in multi-class, which is why most people choose the dual class over multi, especially for harder difficult setting playthroughs. Tip number 6, THACO. An acronym that stands for Two Hit Armor Class 0, an older D&D rule that was taken out in the new edition rules. To make this easier, the lower your THACO is, the better. The game will roll a 20-sided die on physical attack rolls. A 20 is always a critical hit, and a 1 is always a critical miss, regardless of THACO or AC. An example of a THACO calculation in-game would be a character who has a THACO of 12 who is attacking an enemy with an AC of 2. You would simply subtract 12, which is your character's THACO score, minus 2, which is the AC of the enemy, and you would get a 10. Meaning your character would need to roll a 10 or higher on that d20 roll to hit this enemy who has an AC of 2. It's as simple as that. Tip number 7. The more expensive rooms at the inn just restore more HP when you buy them. If you're just resting to memorize spells, just pick the cheapest room. Tip number 8. You can buy drinks at bartenders and owners of inn to hear rumors and gossip. Usually the more expensive drinks you buy, the quicker they will start talking. You usually have to buy at least a few drinks before they will talk about any rumors. Tip number 9. If a character dies in your party, make sure to first pick up all their weapons, armor, and items first. That's extremely important because you can forget your gear if you don't pick up their stuff. Then make your way to a priest temple in or near a town to res them. It's 100 gold for every level of the character killed. Tip number 10. If a character is petrified, they will automatically leave your party, and the only way to heal them is with a scroll of Stone to Flesh or the spell Stone to Flesh. You can buy Stone to Flesh scrolls at almost any priest temple. Tip number 11. Speaking of Stone to Flesh, for enemies like the Basilisk, that you will come across, it's extremely helpful to have protection from petrification cast on your characters beforehand. You can also use summons like Animate Dead to attack them, but I found the best way and easiest way is to just use the protection spell. Tip number 12. The Sleep level 1 spell is probably my most favorite spell in the game. It doesn't work on undead, but almost everything else it will. This spell basically puts entire mobs of enemies asleep, and this is probably the most important part. Any attacks you make against those sleeping enemies will never miss. That's huge. Tip number 13. I'm going to wrap a few other spells up here in one tip that you should probably be using as well, which are Bless, Horror, Blind, Magic Missile, and Fireball. These are all incredibly great spells to use throughout the game. Blind being particularly useful because you can basically render casters and melee basically useless. Tip number 14. Give your weaker characters like healers, mages, enchanters ranged weapons and have them shoot from the back so they don't get hammered. Examples of some weapons are slings, bows, darts. Always make sure your characters have a good amount of ammo before starting out on any adventures. Tip number 15. To interrupt mages and enemy casters, which in my opinion are the hardest foes in the game, use magic missiles, darts, bows, etc., and make all enemy casters a pincushion so you can interrupt them quickly. Otherwise, they can fear, stun, or horror you, and it's quite annoying. Tip number 16. Bereghost has some nice magical weapon and armor upgrades in the beginning of the game, once you acquire a few thousand gold. The longswords +1, the different shield and armor pieces with +1. Also, they have slings and bows with +1. Tip number 17. Baldur's Gate does have player housing, well, sort of. You can store items in chests and houses if your bags get too full. I use the house next to the left of the Thunderhammer Smithy in Bereghost. There's a couple chests in the house I drop stuff into. Another good place is in the Friendly Arm Inn, the second and third floor. They have tons of chests for storage there. Keep in mind, if you drop items on the streets and floors, they will eventually go missing because NPCs will pick them up when you leave. So just remember to throw your wanted items in a storage chest. Tip number 18. Do Firebeads book quest in Bereghost. You can buy the book he's requesting right across the street in the inn. Hand it back to him and he gives you a scroll pouch that will hold all your instant cast scrolls and regular spells. This will free up your bags immensely. Tip number 18. If you have the Near a Wild Mage character content unlocked, she comes with a jewelry bag that you can throw all your gems into, and also your jewelry. You can put tons of jewelry in this bag and gems, and I have never filled it yet. And like the scroll pouch, it will free up your inventory greatly. I'm not sure how you would even keep your bags free without this item because you come across so many gems to sell in the game. Tip number 20. You can see what type of weapon your characters are attacking with on their portrait when you start a fight. Sometimes you may have the wrong weapon ready, and you can see this easily here and switch before the fight starts. Tip number 21. Hide in shadows and move silently are great skills to put points into for a thief. The reason being is you can backstab for 5 times the damage at higher levels. Your chance of success on hide in shadows is greatly improved if you hide in shade or at nighttime. I've read posts that people have cleared entire dungeon areas with just a thief, and a good hide in shadows and move silently score. Tip number 22. If you're playing on PC, right-click spell slots on the main screen with your caster selected to shortcut any spells you have memorized. Tip number 23. Save your game constantly when scouting new map areas. The default shortcuts on PC are Q for save and L for load. Quick saves will keep rolling over 4 different save slots, so you're pretty safe if you die or forget to do something and you want to reload. Tip number 24. I always keep a few healing potions on each one of my character's quick slot spots for easy healing. You can buy these at temples and certain merchants. Also, you can find them on certain enemies. And my last tip here for Baldur's Gate 1, number 25. You can quick travel on Baldur's Gate 1. You must have first been on that specific map at least once though before you can. Traveling long distances to a previous area though will result in higher chances at a random battle. These are some tips I wish I knew before playing Baldur's Gate 1. I hope they make your journey along the Sword Coast easier. And if you enjoyed my guide and it helped you, please hit me up with a like and subscribe. And I'll see you gamers next time on the tube. Peace.